Okay, let's jump right into this explainer. Today, we're decoding the massive architectural blueprint that is the Common Core state standards for English language arts. If you're an educator, a curriculum designer, or honestly, just someone who cares about how we're shaping the minds of the next generation, you already know that educational standards can sometimes feel like this dense, impenetrable maze of jargon. Well, we're going to cut right through all that noise today. We are looking at the exact framework designed to make sure students graduating high school are genuinely ready for college and the modern workforce, and throughout this, we'll actually look at how this high-level policy trickles all the way down to things like a grade 7 poetry work practice lesson.
So, before we get deep into the weeds of grade-level specifics, we have to start with the foundational question driving this entire document. What does it actually mean to be a literate person in the 21st century? Because, it's not just about knowing your ABCs anymore or reading a basic sentence out loud. In today's hyper-competitive world, literacy is about navigating a frankly staggering amount of daily information, both in print and online. It's about being a critical consumer, a sharp communicator, and a lifelong learner.
And I think this quote brilliantly captures the inspiring vision of these standards. It says, students who meet the standards readily undertake the close, attentive reading that is at the heart of understanding and enjoying complex works. This is all about an evidence-based foundation to ensure every single student is college and career ready. They aren't just skimming the surface, right? They're doing the hard work of close reading. They're building knowledge, enlarging their experiences, and really broadening their worldviews through both literature and informational text. So, here's how we're going to break down this huge framework. We'll start with the literacy blueprint, move to the portrait of a ready student, check out the 4 core strands, talk about shared responsibility, climb the staircase of complexity, and finally, look at what the standards exclude.
Okay, Section 1, the literacy blueprint, the foundation of college and career readiness.
So, where did this all come from? These standards didn't just appear out of thin air. They're actually the culmination of an incredibly broad, state-led effort. But the absolutely crucial takeaway here is that every single standard was included only if the evidence proved it was essential for success. This is a highly researched, internationally benchmarked synthesis. And it's a living document, so as we get better evidence about how kids learn, the standards are meant to evolve. They are laser-focused on actual end results, not on dictating every little thing a teacher does.
Section 2, Portrait of a Ready Student, the end goal. Let's look at our ultimate destination here.
Before you build a house, you need to know what it's supposed to look like, right? Well, look at this list. What's really interesting is how fast these capacities move way beyond just sounding out words. We're talking about real critical thinking here. A ready student demonstrates independence. They don't need constant handholding to make a point. They comprehend, but they also critique, meaning they don't just believe everything they read. They deeply value evidence-based reasoning. It's a holistic portrait of an engaged, open-minded citizen.
Moving on to Section 3, the 4 core strands, structuring literacy.
So the document itself is huge, but it gets conceptual clarity by using what are called the College and Career Readiness, or CCR, anchor standards. These are the broad, overarching goals. They act as the absolute backbone of the document, and they are identical across all grades. Think of the anchor standards as the ultimate destination, and then the specific grade-level standards are the turn-by-turn directions to get there by the end of each school year.
Now, those standards are divided into these 4 interconnected strands, and interconnected is the key word here. Let's say you are looking at a lesson for grade 7 English on poetry, a worked practice lesson. A student doesn't just read the poem in a vacuum. They use the reading strand for close reading examples. They use the writing strand to write out their evidence-based reasoning. And they use the speaking and listening strand to debate their interpretation with classmates. It's all woven together seamlessly.
Section 4, a shared responsibility, literacy across subjects.
This brings us to a massive, revolutionary shift in how we view education. Literacy instruction is officially no longer just the English teacher's problem. For so long, reading and writing were just siloed down the hall in one classroom, but the framework recognizes that reading in the real world is incredibly diverse. So this doesn't mean your biology teacher is suddenly teaching Shakespeare. It means the biology teacher is helping students read, write, and argue like real scientists, using specific types of experimental evidence.
To put that into perspective, just look at this data from the AAEP reading framework. Watch how the demand for informational text just drastically scales up by grade 12. In 4th grade, you've got a neat 50-50 split between literature and information. But by the time a kid is a senior in high school, 70% of what they read across their entire school day should be informational text. If we dump 70% of the reading load strictly onto the English teacher, we completely lose out on the rich, imaginative literature that the ELA classroom is literally designed for. The whole school has to share this load.
Section 5. The Staircase of Complexity. Reading Standard 10.
Okay, so how do we actually prepare students for that 70% informational load? Standard 10 introduces a vital concept for measuring text complexity using 3 exact factors. First, quantitative. These are the things a computer can easily score, like sentence length. Second, qualitative. This requires real human judgment to look at layers of meaning and language structure. And third, you have to match the specific reader to the text and the task at hand to make sure it's actually the right level of rigorous.
Standard 10 is essentially a grade-by-grade staircase. Every year, students must step up, building the analytical stamina to handle more intricate texts. Think back to that grade 7 poetry worked practice we talked about. Those 7th graders are on a very specific step. The lesson is giving them close reading examples and teaching them evidence-based reasoning so they can master that specific grade-level band. Once they master it, they do transfer practice, applying those exact same skills to totally new, harder texts as they step up to 8th grade.
Finally, Section 6. What does standards exclude? Boundaries of the blueprint.
You know, to really understand a blueprint, you have to know what it doesn't cover. Because these standards are so big, people often mistake them for a daily, minute-by-minute curriculum. But look at this contrast on the screen. They are absolutely not an exhaustive curriculum. The standards say, hey, a 7th grader needs to be able to analyze how rhyme shapes a poem. But they do not tell the teacher which specific poem to use or what graphic organizer to hand out. They leave immense room for educators to use their on-the-ground expertise, including how to handle special needs interventions or English language learners.
So I'm going to leave you with this provocative thought to chew on. How is your own local school scaffolding that staircase of complexity? Are the texts rigorous enough? Are your history and science departments truly sharing the literacy load? The blueprint is here, and it's designed for the reality of the 21st century. But a blueprint is really only as good as the builders who bring it to life in the classroom. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep questioning, keep learning, and as always, keep holding that bar high.